He was in New York recently. We did an interview with him. He has a book out called The Ownership Solution. My own personal sense is that this is a summary statement of a movement in economics, the most important in the country. Hope you might enjoy it. Jeff Gates, The Ownership Solution. Thank you. Welcome very much to Conversations, where it's a pleasure to welcome to the program Jeff Gates. And Jeff Gates is a long-term person who's been concerned with legislative matters in Washington, worked with Russell Long for a long time, and has written a really extremely interesting book. I want to show it right here at the outset, and we might show it a number of times during this program. But if you could, maybe come in a little tight focus on this. It's called The Ownership Solution, and it's subtitled Toward a Shared Capitalism for the 21st Century. And I personally would like to think that this is one of the most important books that's currently available to the consciousness of people in this country or the world, and it's a great pleasure to welcome to the program Jeff Gates. And Jeff, welcome very, very much to Conversations and to New York City.
Thanks, Harold. Good to be back with you.
Yes, it is. It's been a while. We saw each other last, it was a long time, 1983, but we were involved at the ESOP Association meeting, and you were involved with Russell Long. But I wonder, we have a considerable period of time, and I wonder, we want to talk about the many issues that you discuss in here, but could you ground the program a little bit in your own background, your own personal background, your educational background, where you hail from, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, sure.
Let's weave it in, and then maybe we can start to talk some of the issues that you addressed in this extremely seminal book, The Ownership Solution.
Well, thank you for your kind comments. As your listeners will hear immediately, I have a bit of what they call the South in the mouth. I'm from Georgia originally, still live in Atlanta. I worked with Russell Long as counsel to the Senate Finance Committee for 7 years, from 1980 to 87. My specialty is working on companies to expand ownership. I've since leaving the Senate, I've worked in 26 foreign countries, advising on what I call ownership engineering.
Okay.
Usually it's a country that's going from socialism into something else. Yeah. And they're intrigued by how they might include employees in ownership or some broad-based ownership. And that's my background. I've been at this since 1973, about as long as you have.
Yeah, it goes way back.
And it continues to fascinate me because, as your viewers will find, it covers quite a bit of territory. It has a lot to do with the social fabric of the country, and has a lot to do with some of the financial crises in the United States as well.
Yeah, and you were chief of counsel, chief of staff, I think, with Russell Long when he first came in contact with Louis Kelso.
Well, it was a bit later than that.
Yeah, okay.
But oddly enough, he and I both became intrigued by this area in the fall of 1973.
Really? Okay.
Now, I was in law school at the time, but I was editor of our law school newspaper, and I took the editor's prerogative and wrote about this fairly often.
Good for you.
And so, but later on joined the Finance Committee in 1980 with Russell Long. So some of the legislation had been enacted by then. We did quite a bit more since then. In fact, in the U.S. there have been about 26 pieces of legislation to encourage what we call ESOPs, employee stock ownership plans.
Yeah, it's amazing how much success they did have in the Congress. One wonders, and we might want to discuss it, how much success they had with the established economic community, economist community. But they had considerable success in the Congress with the ESOP legislation.
Yeah, it helped having Russell.
Long, yes.
Well, it was. I mean, it was like being squired around by the 800-pound gorilla.
Yes,
working with Russell Long.
Yeah.
As your viewers may know from American history, Russell Long is from Louisiana, and he was the son of a fellow named Huey Long, who wanted to redistribute the wealth back in the 1930s.
Every man a king.
Every man a king, but no man wears a crown. And we could use that again about this time, I think.
Really.
But Russell Long, being a conservative, wanted a way to distribute wealth without redistributing wealth. And if you're chairman of the Senate Finance Committee for a long time, as he was, you're in a very good position to do something about that. And so the notion was, and it came to him through Lou Kelso, the inventor of the employee stock ownership plan, the notion of creating an ownership broadening technique of finance, which is what the ESOP is. You basically encourage companies to borrow money to buy shares, not for current shareholders, but for the employees. And that's work that's been reasonably successful. We've got about, at last count, about 11,000 companies and about 8% of about 8 million employees in ESOPs in the U.S.
That's a pretty good start. There's a long way to go, but that is a start.
Well,
and there's a philosophy behind it, but okay, yeah.
Well, in the grand scheme of things, last year in the U.S., to give you an idea of how far we have to go,
yes,
we financed $1,845 billion last year in the U.S. economy. $845 billion was new plant and equipment, new buildings, new machinery. $1,000 billion $1 trillion was mergers and acquisitions.
Oh boy.
So that's $1,845 billion. The ESOPs accounted for less than $1 billion of that.
That puts it a little bit in perspective.
A little bit
right,
in perspective.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But the idea is there, and the idea is a unique one that's important, and it's one that I think probably goes to the kernel or the core of some of what you're trying to advance here with the ownership solution. Some of his thinking and maybe some variations on it and so forth is what you're talking about. Maybe you could talk about the book, what prompted you to write it, and what are some of the major currents of thought that you wanted to have go through the weave of the book.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate the question. Yeah, the book came out of a conversation I had with a Swiss multi-billionaire by the name of Stefan Schmidt-Heine, who was recruited to organize the business community worldwide to attend the Earth Summit in Rio in 1992. And he asked me, why is it that we can't seem to get environmentally sustainable development with the great amount of sort of global capitalism, all this money flowing around the world? And I wrote federal pension law for a long time.
Yes.
There's now about 12 to 14,000 billion. That's $12 trillion in the hands of money managers in the U.S. alone. About half of that's in the hands of pension trustees, money managers. So I open with a chapter I call Disconnected Capitalism. It's what I call money on automatic.
All right.
What you have is 28-year-olds who've been trained at all of our business schools, sitting around computer screens, chasing only one value. It's called net present value. They chase financial values. And so as a consequence, you find that you cannot, in that process, pick up things like the effect on the environment, the effect on the fiscal sustainability of the country, the effect on civil cohesion, the things that we all really value can't be picked up in financial value.
That's a little unfortunate. Hazel Henderson writes well to this, don't you think?
She does.
Particularly on the environmental field.
Yeah, Hazel writes about this. She talks about new paradigms and the need to expand ownership so that you advance sustainability not only in the environmental area.
Right.
For example, the notion would be if, say here in New York, if your viewers, many of them, I expect all of them, pay a bill each month to Con Edison.
I expect we do. Yeah.
And every time you turn on your light, you are generating a return for someone who's an investor in Con Edison. Now it's going to be the rare viewer who owns stock in Con Edison. So the notion being, for example, why not begin to shift that ownership to you, the consumer, because financially, the Con Edison's value is a function of people paying their bills.
Yes, that's right.
That cash flow.
And they're a natural constituency.
They're a natural constituency.
Yes.
So why not over time? You can live here in Con Edison's district for 100 years and continue to pay a return to someone who may live in Jakarta, for all you know.
Yes.
So it makes no sense at all.
Yeah.
So the notion is what you need for sustainability, including environmental sustainability, is an element of what I call up-close capitalism.
Okay, spell it out.
Up close. For example, if you were a Con Ed shareholder, and if Con Ed was an environmental, did something environmentally sound, they did something they shouldn't be doing. What would you do now? I mean, what can you do? You can write the mayor, you can write the utility district, you can write your congressman, you can write your senator, you can write the president. You really have no stake except a political stake.
Yeah.
But if you own stock in Con Edison, you can say, excuse me, but I'm a shareholder, and I'm an owner, and we're just simply not going to do this anymore. And you and your fellow stakeholders, now shareholders, would have a property right to say, although we make more money if you dump the solvents out the back door into the river, we'll take part of our return in having a cleaner environment and have a little less financial return.
Yeah, if that's done through what Lewis used to call a binary system, where it's, you're using binary stock and spreading it widely among those people. One of the questions that's raised is whether the voting rights follow through on that binary ownership or not. That's one of the important questions, isn't it? Whether voting rights are voted through to the people who might become owners of a entity such as Con Ed or some other entity.
Right. Well, Con Ed would be a natural, and in fact, in that area we call it a CSOP, or a Consumer Stock Ownership Plan, or Customer Stock Ownership Plan.
Right.
And talking with the head of strategic planning at British Gas a number of years ago, not unlike Con Edison, they said our problem here is we have no constituency, no natural constituency. The only time people think about us, well, they pay their bill and they don't think about us. When they think about us is when we need to raise the rates, or when we have some kind of environmental screw-up.
Yeah,
It's
right.
the only time they think of us, it's always a negative impression.
Yeah.
I said, well, obviously you have a constituency, you just haven't brought them around to think like owners.
Mm-hmm.
And so the notion being over time, you'd be doing Con Edison a favor, and also imagine each time you paid your bill, you'd be paying a dividend to yourself rather than somebody else.
Yeah.
And you'd be building a modest, but at least each bill payment would accumulate a little bit of capital for you in Con Edison.
And it would also be a way in which, maybe we can spell it out a little, I'm not sure if you want to go another direction,
Sure.
if we can, but it'd be a way in which we can bring the logic of business finance, which is you make an investment that will pay for itself out of its future earnings. That's the logic of business finance, that we could begin to have that principle apply to greater numbers of people within our society than it does or has.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it.
And is that important?
It's very important. If you go back to first principles, I mean, what's the purpose of finance?
Mm-hmm.
Is to acquire assets before you have the money to pay for them.
That's right.
Now, rich people know you don't buy assets. You finance them. You let them pay for them from their earnings.
That's right.
So the ESOP concept, the consumer stock ownership, the CSOP concept, is really 6 words. It's productive assets can pay for themselves.
Interesting, yeah. Right.
And now what we've been doing is waiting around for people to pay for the assets from the earnings of their labor,
Yeah.
instead of engineering capitalism so that the earnings of capital would pay for the capital for broad-based people.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's quite easy to understand how it is that the rich continue to get richer.
Yeah, and we want to get some of the dimensions of that because it's just getting out of sight.
Well, it is, and the notion being that what we're playing, the game that we're playing in the U.S. is what I call, for most people, we're playing something I call Marie Antoinette capitalism.
Wow.
Only instead of let them eat cake, the modern refrain is let them buy stock. Okay?
Yeah, let them eat stock, I think.
Let them buy stock,
Well,
you know?
yeah.
Okay. So the notion being we're waiting around for people to buy their way into capitalism. We've been waiting about 200 years now.
Mutual funds or something?
Well, no, even with mutual funds, you're finding, as of 1995, 71% of Americans had $2,000 or less in stock mutual funds, 401k plans, all those normal things you think people would have stock in.
Yeah.
So even though you saw this boom sort of bull stock market, it was a very thin veneer of people who really benefited from it.
Some people say if you raise the ownership issue, and some people will say, well, we have that almost solved and taken care of that because look at all this investment and activity in mutual funds by the folks. They'll say that, people will, but this is to be, this is to be disputed.
Well, no, they're not to be disputed. They're just flat wrong.
All right.
The net worth of the top 1% of the population is now in excess of the combined net worth of the bottom 90%.
Good Lord.
And it's been that way. This hasn't changed. It's been that way quite a long time.
Is it getting worse?
It is getting rapidly worse.
Right.
And worldwide, you're finding, as of mid-September of this year, that the 225 richest people in the world now have combined assets greater than the combined income of the 47% poorest people in the world. That's 2.5 billion people. So
That's
you
their
have
asset base.
so you have 225 people who have assets
Yes.
greater than the combined income of 2.5 billion people.
Not to mention whatever assets those people might have, which is probably next to zero.
Next to
in terms
zero.
Of the because the system, the way it's set up, it is that the concentration of the ownership becomes more and more because they have the collateralization and the capability of making investments that will pay for themselves and building out of the future, and more and more ownership in the hands of those who have that already. Happy position of being well capitalized.
If you're trying to become a capitalist, the traditional approach is you have to buy your way into your way. We know that's not working. But then if you try to borrow money and use that to buy capital, the earnings of the capital become more. The problem is you have to have collateral. So where is your collateral? And you may have noticed that credit is very quickly allocated to people. And so that is, in fact, the rich do get rich. It's not something very It's just the way the system evolved and came up over years. But the notion is it's got, well, go back globally just a minute. The richest 3 people worldwide now have combined assets greater than the combined GDP of the 48 poorest developed countries. Now you can we then have 3 billion people living less than $2 a day. 1.2 billion people living less than $1.
And the trend, Mr. Wilson, in that direct from the World Bank, is that it's going to become worse.
Well, what he suggests, he calls it the challenge of inclusion. He says the
capital accumulating, probably there's a great deal to be said for the fact that there's this accumulation of a sense of self-esteem, accomplishment. It's easier to accomplish, it's easier to do, so they get a better sense of themselves. And there can be a danger of there being some hubris built in there to some of the people who are sitting on top of that pinnacle, don't you think?
Well, there's definitely that. And at the other end of it, you find there's a fellow wrote a book out of Sussex University called Unhealthy Society. And the subtitle is The Afflictions of Inequality. He said, for example, 80% of the most common causes of death, 80% will cover amongst blue and white-collar workers. But even more interesting, he said, it's the relative income that tends to be most debilitating. Because where you find a great disparity as well, that people have this sense of inferiority. They have a sense that there's things out there that they should have and can't.
Oh, yeah.
And so their self-esteem is damaged, and it literally eats away at them.
Yeah, sure. And besides, all of the messages are saying that the reason people are not living in that clear better, we just haven't worked hard enough. We're working harder. That's what the culture tends to try and say to the person and put it at an individual level. It's their fault if they're not making it.
Well, one signal of this, and you can see it, the UK, the United Kingdom, and the U.S. now are the world leaders in disparities in wealth and income. And they're also the world leaders in the shortage of life
Among the developed
countries. And so the sociologists are saying this is not coincidental. There is a relationship between the two. So it has to do not only with sort of environmental sustainability, but clearly social sustainability, but even things like cultural sustainability. For example, the very modest wealth of white families is 7 times that of Hispanic, and it's probably 10 times that of African American. So you've got that going as well, which means that the average African American has maybe $5,000 and I also talk in the book a bit about the fiscal unsustainability. Let me give you one example. Next year we'll pay out $858 billion in the three top entitlement programs: Social Security, Medicare, and Civil Service pension, paid largely to people who do not have access. $858 billion. And meanwhile, we have the General Accounting Office telling us that we need $112 billion to fix up our deteriorated schools. Not to build new ones, but to fix up the deteriorated. And we know if we're going to educate our children to compete in a globalized economy, we have to become computer literate, for example. A third of those schools, even if they could afford the computers, could not accommodate the computers because they have insufficient electrical capacity. So what's happening now is because of this need to support people with income, because they don't have assets, we're crowding out the fiscal capacity, the budgetary capacity of the nation to do things like educate our people, clean up the environment, do health care, those types of things. So this is not a very small issue. It's a very big issue.
It's a very big issue, and it can be directed to people who might call themselves conservative. You know what I'm saying? They could address that. Because a lot of the people who are going to be on the liberal or the left, let's just say, side of things, are going to say we're getting those things to those people because they need it, just like we're going to have child labor laws because it's wrong. It's a certain kind of principle that doesn't tie into the way in which the production of the economy is going. But this argument you're talking about is something that can begin to apply to people who are conservative. And interesting, if I may, Russell Long and Louis Kelso and your work is something that you can be touching base on a whole wide, eclectic kind of consciousness from people from the far left and the right, as those bills that went through Congress got support all the way from Edward Kennedy to the far right wing. The idea is very eclectic and able to be understood by a great wide variety of people along the political spectrum.
Yeah, the notion was to write the book in sort of a non-political idiom, because I did want to get Jack Kemp and Michael Novak and people like that on endorse the book, which they did.
You have had an incredible...
But I also want to get Dick Gephardt and Mary Farmer and Bill Bradley and that crowd, which I did get. And the notion being, I mean, if you're a conservative, that has notions of having fundamental respect for private property. Let me give you one example.
It's a basic thing. I mean, the idea of a socialist is that it's basically the institution of private property is the one that wants to be about safe.
Well, you get a choice. I mean, in a robust democracy, you have a choice. Either you get people economic assets, or they will use their political assets, their vote. And rightly or wrongly, they'll say this vote entitles me not to be impoverished. So next year we'll pay out $858 billion in entitlements, right? Now keep in mind, that's before the first of 76 million baby boomers retire. They're going to start retiring in about 10 years' time. If 71% of them have less than $2,000 in stock, We're digging a fiscal nightmare for ourselves.
Mr. Clinton says he wants to fix Social Security with the surplus. Think he can do that?
Well, let me tell you what the...
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't...
No, let me tell you what that looks like. It's wrong for me. Because what you're finding right now is most people's most important asset is now their entitlement to Social Security.
It's not a right thing, entitlement. It's part of entitlement.
Entitlement. Because there's no fun there. We got a little bit of
it's
fun.
Not welfare.
Now you're paying money in, but you're paying some money in, and it's a tax on your labor. But the most important asset that most people have now is their Social Security payments to be paid in the future. Okay? So what that means in this world's most dynamic capitalist economy is that for most people, their most important asset is insurance that someone else's job is going to be taxed on their behalf. Because that's what Social Security is. Okay, now to add irony to insult, that of course is a tax on job. But now the notion of privatizing Social Security and trying to make it more market-oriented. Listen to this remedy. Yeah. The notion now is to take 2 percentage points of the tax. The tax is 12.4 percentage points. It's 34% of the tax revenue that we generate each year. We're doing $1.7 trillion in tax revenue. Social Security is 34% already.
Through FICA.
Through FICA.
Yeah, but that doesn't go into the general fund.
No, it goes into we'll come back to that.
All right.
But what the proposal now is to take 2 percentage points of that and put it in an index portfolio of equities, into the stock market. That's called privatization. Now imagine for a moment, you're taking a job tax and you can put it into a portfolio of 100 companies that say have equities. Now keep in mind, this doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure out what's going to happen, because I can name 50 of those companies and so can you. Rest assured Microsoft's going to do it. Okay? 2 percentage points of that this past year would have been $93 billion. Okay? Right. Now imagine $93 billion more per year chasing those equities. Okay, now Bill Gates now has $61 billion. What's going to happen when we take $93 billion and put it in a portfolio chasing those stocks? So the problem is that in part is the system has made a few people very, very rich. Now, do you think we're going to solve that problem by taking a job tax and making those people richer?
Are we going to have something other than a job economy? Or what is it? We spoke earlier. We said that we have it was going to be called the Full Employment Act. It was called the Employment Act of 1946. That's our basic policy grounding statement, that we're going to distribute income to the mass of people in society by having an economy that encourages employment, full employment if we can, and we're going to distribute income through their labor participation in production. Right. But we have an economy that is becoming more and more capital intensive, and there's a mismatch in terms of the way the mass of the society is related to the way things are actually produced in this economy.
Yeah, it's very odd, in fact, that we live in this capitalist economy, that we have kind of a labor theory of value, which is a Marxist notion, that we say that the way you generate value and the way you generate income in this capitalist economy is by going to work. And if you think about it, it's really embedded even in our language. The word salary comes from the word salt. The the Roman legions were paid in salt for their desertions on behalf of the crown, that sort of thing. So in the book, I have a chapter called Workable Work Ethic. And the notion being that the work ethic is not a perspiration ethic.
All right, good.
It's an exchange ethic. It means you put in a feedback loop. You take out according to what you put in. But the problem is we've concentrated so many of the inputs, meaning the capital asset, into so few hands. But what's happening is they put the market values their inputs, so it gives them more income. Right. So you're never going to get it. To give you an idea, what we tried to do is address this issue downstream. Between 1965 and 1992, we paid out $3.2 trillion in poverty programs. $3.2 trillion.
With a lot of poverty.
That would have been enough to buy the entire assets of Fortune 500 and 75% of America's farmland.
Right. But we did see that the poverty was a big problem.
Well, do you see that poverty is that much more eliminated?
Yeah, no, I know.
Okay.
All right, right.
So what the problem is, you're addressing it downstream. You're worried about the income distribution.
Right.
And the real problem is not income distribution, it's input distribution.
Right.
Okay, now if we keep pretending that it's labor that's the primary input factor.
Right. And that's very deeply embedded in the consciousness.
It's embedded in our very consciousness of who we are, the labor theory.
Lewis used to say that all of them, Keynes, Marx, Schumpeter, they were all based upon a labor theory of value. Marxists were based on a surplus value of labor. They saw labor as congealed. Capital as congealed labor. But he said they were all based on a labor theory. And he said he had that chart, you're probably familiar, where he said in Tom Jefferson's time, 10% of the input to production was capital. A guy made a pair of shoes, he had a hammer. Right. But it was labor. It was really, but now it's up to where it's maybe 90% is capital input to production, and that's all owned by a minuscule handful of people at the top. And we're really into a mismatch if that is the case. The way in which production has been done has changed as we've moved increasingly into a cybernated and automated, possibly increasingly automated, technologically based productive system, and we're still trying to distribute all the income according to labor criteria out of the historical pattern. Is that one of the large paradigm problems?
Yeah, you wonder, I mean, you begin to wonder, to come back to a theme, you wonder where the conservatives are in this debate. I mean, do we have any genuine conservatives left in the country? Because if you want a private property system, you've got a couple of choices. Either you can have a system that is broad-based with a lot of people owning property, and you get a broad-based, a laissez-faire economy where government does not spend as much of its muscle in redistributing income. Or you can continue to do what we've done, which is be absolutely agnostic about who owns things, and then only worry about the income distribution. And so you're guaranteed you're going to build a larger and larger government that's going to have to redistribute more income. I recall once walking into the Finance Committee with Russell Long and Bob Dole, and we were going to get a vote on one of these amendments. And Bob Dole said, I don't know much about employee ownership, but Russell Long reminds me, he said, when people own property, they vote Republican, and I'm for that. So you would think that, so this idea has got impeccable conservative credentials. Ronald Reagan used to call it the answer to the stupidity of Karl Marx.
Yeah, he signed on to the idea, and so many
he was
people
one of the early forceful proponents. Now, to give you an idea of the range of sort of politics in this area, it's always amused me to no end, is my last 2 weeks or so with the Senate Finance Committee, I was asked to write speech material both for Jesse Helms and for Jesse Jackson. And that pretty much capsulizes the politics in this area. Yeah. So I found the politics, frankly, an amusing and somewhat distracting sideline. The issues are too critical now to get it involved in that kind of nonsensical political posturing. We're facing a very critical time, and we're facing a very critical threat to civil society and to the very roots of our democratic system. And so it's time we stepped up and said, look, property is a property of the system, just like wet is a property of water. So the notion being we ought to be playing to our strength. Property is embedded in the system. Let's use our strength and let's play to that strength. And let's get people connected to the system through that strength. And that's where we keep failing. We just don't seem to step up to that, and this is not yet an issue.
Okay, we have all these people who sign on to it, from Jesse Helms, from Jesse Jackson, and so forth, and they'll sign on to the idea, or the incredible list of people. We're going to show at the end the incredible array of people who have endorsed your book. It ranges all the way from Mikhail Gorbachev to Mario Cuomo and so forth. That we have that. We have these ideas out there. They're out there. Lewis and Russell Long and you worked and that kind of thing. These ideas are out there. But the problem is to grow. What is needed? What can be done? What specifically can we do in order to try to move in the direction that so critically we need to do?
The first thing is just what we're doing here today, which is having some conversation about it, because this is not an issue. I mean, you and I combined have probably got 50 years working on this. You and I both go back a long way.
It's really hard to get anybody to address it.
Well, so the notion is you need people to say, this really is an issue. This widening disparity between rich and poor. The notion that capitalism does tend to concentrate ownership needs to be on the radar screen, and it is not. We need to train people to talk about this in an intelligent sort of way, a way that's not threatening, not something about redistributing wealth, but sort of, Huey Long's kind of populist notion. But the notion that capitalism, if you want a really strong capitalism, it's got to be widely populated with capitalists by definition. And the system simply does not do that. So I think that it's always intrigued me that the conservatives talk this language but don't really step up to do anything about it. But the truth is, what you found was the Republicans lowered taxes and the rich got richer. The Democrats raised taxes and the rich got richer. So this isn't a Republican or Democratic issue.
It's systemic.
It's systemic.
And it's worldwide.
And it is worldwide. And this is, I work in so many countries, but if you go to Mexico, it's 37 families on 40% of everything. In Brazil, it's about 6 families. And Venezuela, it's 13 families. In Jamaica, it's 22 families. And El Salvador, it's 6 families. In Pakistan, it's the 300 feudals. And that is the pattern worldwide. It is concentrated ownership.
Well, that's a pattern that's come out of history. The feudal times, there used to be a king of the hill and like the peasants in the field, that sort of thing. It's been like that for a long time. But we're going through a kind of, and yet we have this incredible, if we look at it objectively or ontologically perhaps, we're looking at the system that is merged, we have an incredible technologically augmented capability that Buckminster Fuller you referred to, recognizing ephemeralization and so forth, ability of knowing how to, as he would have put it, make the world work, or the spaceship Earth work for the people on the earth. We have an incredible capability to provide almost in ways that some people begin to say, George Gilder and others from the right wing, say that we're beginning to get to the point where we're transcending scarcity as an ontological reality. It's there right before us if we could have a way of finance that allows us to do what we're technologically capable of doing, but we don't seem to have that. And that's the thing that we're sort of trying to get after, aren't we?
Yeah. I mean, Fuller was right. He was very much one for engineered, sort of solutions or systems that would sort of emerge from the self-organizing principles within the system. But this notion of ephemeralization, this notion, so your viewers know, is now that we're doing more and more with less and less.
Microprocessing.
Less and less units of time and energy and mass and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we do have broad-based leisure in front of us, broad-based leisure, if we would design ourselves to that. Instead, we're expecting the system to sort of, just sort of magically emerge into a system that has broad-based capitalist and broad-based capital ownership, and it simply is not going to happen.
Or we'll finance it in a way that will encourage labor. I mean, they just recently started in Paris. There's subway systems with no drivers. Yeah, they're going now with no drivers. It's done by a computer system and so forth. But they did have to deal with the union to make sure that everybody was covered because they depended upon their labor relationships to production for income to buy shoes and food and things. Right. And they're out of touch with the way things could be produced, perhaps, if we begin to look at things. How does this relate in terms of what capital formation collectively is going to be available for us to do, what it is we're capable of doing? We have problems with infrastructure and so forth. If we were to get an ownership solution put into legislation and so forth, could it increase the capital that would be available for us?
Absolutely.
In terms of providing for the needs of our economic needs?
Absolutely. And imagine, for example, back in Eisenhower's era, when we did the interstate highway system.
Yeah.
Every one of those contracts was let out to a private contractor somewhere. Probably a campaign contributor somewhere.
Right, yeah.
So imagine if every time a defense contractor, Ronald Reagan, we financed over $1 trillion worth of defense contracts during his time in office. Imagine if every dollar that went out of every government, federal, state, and local, said, we're not allowing those contracts to go out unless those companies are broadly owned. We're simply not going to do it anymore.
Well, what's going to get you to say that?
You are, and I am. This conversation is going to start that.
Well, there's this group we were here in New York talking to this group about responsible wealth. They're growing around the country. Some people that are beginning to see this issue and the dimensions of the increased capital ownership as becoming absurd. And somebody has to step up with somebody responsible. And there's increasing groups of people who are doing it.
Yeah, well, it would be comical, except it's now tragic.
Yeah, all right. Well, let's hope it didn't have a happy ending.
But I'm quite the optimist in truth.
Yeah, I am too. It's something ontologically.
Well, previously we didn't know what the problem was, and the book was intended to say, here's the problem.
Right.
It's identifiable. We have a system that doesn't create capitalists. It does a beautiful job of creating capitalists. It could be engineered to do both. We know not only what's wrong, but we know how to fix it. We know we can use relationships like the employment relationships, so make employee owners. We can use the consumer relationships and make consumer owners in the case of utilities. In Jamaica, I designed some legislation, which has been enacted, to say you make owners not only people who work directly for a company, but also those who might be work for suppliers or distributors.
Beef and broilers. I'm happy to tell you, I just did a program a couple of weeks ago with the people who are doing the fish farming, beef and broilers.
Oh, my goodness.
Mr. Levy?
Okay, sure.
Yeah, that's beginning to get into Latin America. It's a good idea.
So the notion being, anywhere you've got, I try to reduce this to aphorism, because I work with many policymakers.
You get pattern recognition.
Well, that too, but what I say is where the cash flows, ownership grows.
Okay.
Anybody can remember that.
Yeah.
So if you show me a revenue stream over time, you can turn that into security. Whether it's a security in the case of you paying your utility bill, that's revenue flowing through time. Somebody out there is collecting that as a return on their investment.
That's right.
That could be transformed so that you capture that return.
Right. And that sweat equity, or that that idea of there being an input, labor input, is not a sweat input. It's a feedback loop, or connectivity or something that is needed in terms of understanding that work ethic that we have. Is something that's going to have to be thought through and perhaps remolded or thought differently, particularly as we look at some of these super cybernated productive systems that are looming right over the horizon that I've seen some glimpses of.
Yes, it's not so much a work ethic as what I call a participation ethic, or an input ethic.
All right.
What you're trying to do is connect people to inputs. Now, there's going to always be about 10 to 20% of the population when you have a fairly high education, what we call knowledge workers, or Bob Rice, the former labor secretary, called them symbolic analysts. Investment bankers, accountants, medical people, lawyers, programmers, that sort of thing. and their labor is always going to be fairly highly valued, at least so it seems. So they're going to do fairly well. But the notion being that what do you do for people who are, who stoop and hoe and rake and serve tables and drive buses and things like that? There's only a certain amount of value that has in the marketplace, for better or for worse.
Do you think we could automate some of that out of existence
And
if we had a mind to?
and clearly some of it will be automated out of existence. But the notion being is, and this is the thing that Keynes and others addressed, that if you want to have a dynamic system, you not only need to have dynamic production, you need consumers with money in their pockets.
Absolutely.
And so if you're killing off your consumers, right now worldwide,
there's no fear of that now. We could go into internet. We could go into a deflation.
we have an enormous amount of overcapacity in most every industry. And but what we're doing is kind of arbitraging our labor costs worldwide. And so you're finding, for example, in the free trade zones in Mexico, that the average hourly wage is $1.67. That's for General Electric, Ford, Sylvania, GTE, all those companies that move down there. $1.67. So same workers, if you go just over the border, the Americans working for those same companies, is $16.17.
What would it be in China?
They'd probably be 25 cents. Okay. So the notion that you can get low-cost production, and we love low-cost products. Okay, but the problem is you don't have people with money in their pockets to buy the product at any price.
Yeah, that's right.
And so you begin to see that phenomenon now.
Yeah.
And that's partly why Bob Rubin and others at the Secretary of Treasury says we've never seen anything quite like this.
It's a little hard to understand what's going on.
Well, we've got genuinely global capital markets.
Yeah, right.
The capital is not anchored anywhere. It's all in sort of financial cyberspace.
Right.
At least the portfolio capital can move very quickly. So you find it just flows very, very quickly. And so it's not anchored anywhere. But you find that what the economists say is if you want a developing economy to grow, not only do you need to generate demand, but that demand has to show up in that economy.
All right, yeah.
So if you have a foreign investor come in and make an investment in some country, which sounds great, they create jobs and whatnot, that also means they're creating a perpetual claim on that foreign exchange earning. So they're going to sell things out of the foreign market and whatnot, bring back some foreign exchange, but that foreign investor says, that's mine because I own it. Okay, so the demand doesn't show up in that economy as much as it needs to.
Right.
So that's one reason you find that particularly the commodities-based economies, like Fuller talked about, comprehensive decriminalization, less bauxite, less mass, less commodities. They've been in a recession now for 25 years. We've had in the last 12 years, over 1 billion people have seen their income go down worldwide. So this is not, if we go into recession, it's sort of like welcome to the club, because there's a good part of the world's population has been in for a very long time. And certainly in Africa, their income level is lower now than it was 20 years ago. So they've been in a depression that makes the depression of the 30s look like a fairly mild one. They've been in that for quite a long time.
Awful. And and all of this is underscored by we came back again to that point, again, Fuller, God bless him, ontologic, or having a large comprehensive view of events and so forth. Took a look at it, and he would step out of the bubble a little bit of the reality that some people might be so fixated with and so forth, and say it is really sadly or tragically absurd when you think of the capability that we have. Again, back to that comprehensive capability that we can now, perhaps for the first time in 200,000 years in human history, provide for everybody. We have the design, the capability, the knowledge base. We don't lack the knowledge of penicillin and other kinds of things that we hard won and discovered. And so we have the ability, but we don't have a system that lets us do what we're capable of doing at a philosophical level. That's a central problem concerning mankind, is it not?
Yeah, this is a traditional thing, what they call a paradigm shift. Paradigm means model, or comes from the term sort of a prophecy notion. But the literature in paradigm shifts is pretty clear that you don't get a shift, a change in the model, until it's very clear that the old model doesn't work. Usually it has to genuinely crash. People say, it really is true, isn't it, that the sun doesn't revolve around the earth.
Poor Galileo.
It just really isn't quite the truth.
When he came forth with that, people didn't want to hear it. They had a tremendous psychological investment in those geocentric elliptical orbit pathways, and the notion of the Earth-centered universe, or Freud with the notion of the subconscious. People didn't want to hear it. It was censored. Do you think that might be the case with the ownership thing? It's something that seems so difficult to understand. That's why there's a hard time for the masses of people to understand it, because it seems, and we're not able to somehow get past that self-censorship or the censorship that's within the society, because it's so difficult to get a comprehensive overview of its implications.
I think, in part, the ownership is like this invisible domain. I mean, you can't see ownership, you can't taste it, you can't eat it.
Right.
And finance is the same way. The financial mechanisms are invisible, they're intangible, they're all contractual. And so people can't see these things. I mean, the book is attempting to make them more visible.
Absolutely, yeah.
Trying to make them more visible so they can understand them. And that's part of the challenge here. But people do know that ownership is a fundamental, property, it's a fundamental element of a private property system. You just simply can't have it doesn't appear to be that you can have a free enterprise system without some property rights in it. So the question is, how do you use property creatively? And how do you use it in a way that addresses an entire range of problems that are now quite distressing? And so the book suggests that what you really need to do is do what I call re-peopleize capitalism. You need to localize it, you need to humanize it, you need to communityize it, you need to create a component of what I call up-close capitalism, so the system can hear itself. Right now we've got this sort of abstract, sort of almost utopian notion that if you simply let financial markets work their will worldwide,
invisible hand,
then everything will just work out fine. So now I live in a country that instead of being known for trying to make the world safe for democracy, it's now known for trying to make the world safe for financial capital. And that's a little different mission.
And it's so fixated on that one aspect of the human scenario.
Now, it may make a certain amount of sense if you indeed facilitated capital to do development, but you can't do the development and be agnostic about the ownership patterns. That's totally contrary to any sensible notion of development at all.
Do you think there's any problem in this? Because, like as Lewis and they used to put it, and Mr. Long used to talk about it, if you're going to make an investment, the distribution of income to those, let's say, binary stock owners or ESOPs participants, they have to be vested, and it takes a time, and they don't get any return on that income until those investors have paid for themselves out of the future earnings. There is a risk in that if the business goes bad, and that's something that can be played to the fears that people have of a traditional view of the economy and so forth. Lewis used to talk about the need of having some sort of a government agency or a casualty insurance company that come in to insure against loss on binary stock, and a government like FHA agency, the federal, what does he call it, the Diffusion Insurance Corporation, that would back that up. Do you think anything like that is something worth talking about as far as the federal government initiatives that might be established in order to try and get the big picture? And do you think in order to get the big picture, we're going to have to get somebody with presidential or a systems comprehensive understanding of this in order to advance it, rather than just the supply side tax and spend additional stuff that's going on now?
Yeah, Lewis Kelso talked about this notion of what he called a capital diffusion insurance corporation. I mean, you want to get capital broadly held, but you also want to address this issue of risk. And so is there some way that the insurance mechanism could be used for that purpose?
An industry could build against the loss of insurance.
Now, so what some insurance companies will tell you, because I've looked into this too,
okay, good,
is you're trying to insure the capitalist system, and by definition that's inherently not insurable. But what they'll also tell you is if you get a genuinely diversified portfolio with about 65 randomly selected stocks, where there's not the adverse selection notion of picking which ones are bad and good performers, then you do have an insurable pool. So there is a possibility of doing that, and there are people working on those products now. So there's a possibility of indeed moving in that direction, begin to take some of the risk out of it.
And that might be able to help in terms of some of the wild market fluctuations that we've experienced to our chagrin over this long period. The depressions, the up down, it might be able to help level out the business line.
But at the same time, and my left of center friends don't like me saying that, in part, I mean, what you find is capitalism is basically a risk layering system. You try to manage risk. And what we typically try to do is take risk out of the system. For example, Social Security looked like it was removing risk from individuals. But what it did was shift the risk from individuals and make it systemic risk. You've now got it's the largest tax most people pay, it's the largest asset most people have, that sort of thing. So what I'm suggesting, and this is where my leftist friends fall off, is I want people at risk. I want that risk in the hands of people who can manage it. That's why you want some up-close capitalists, and you want them sharing the reward, but you also want people, hey, this is my risk. When I show up at work each day, I've got to make sure that, I'm here.
I hear you,
that sort of thing.
Or the creativity. We don't want to take away creativity. We want to make it all safe, and we want to take that creativity, because that's part of a synergistic resonancy, like guys in a band. They're playing. You want to be able to play and take a risk, and Van Gogh painted in a new way. It was risky, but he did it. You don't want to take that away from the human experience.
In fact, you want to add that to the human experience. Most people say, well, you're putting all your eggs in one basket, that sort of thing, forgetting that most people have neither eggs nor basket.
Yes, exactly.
So they have no way to, do anything.
Yeah, let's get a
So
good
in a sense, you're trying to provide an opportunity for people to run a risk.
Yes, right.
And indeed, when you make capitalists of people, they do rise to the occasion.
That's right. So that might address some of the conservative people who would say you're going to create a great deal of responsibility thinking over on that side.
Well, the new thinking is this notion of so-called third way, which Tony Blair is popularized in the UK, Bill Clinton. There's now quite a few center-left governments throughout Europe, France, obviously, Italy, Germany, most recently. And so they're all looking for a third way, somewhere between socialism, that sort of naive sort of socialism, and what I call the naive sort of capitalism. How do you combine sort of the best of both worlds? They're very much against this redistributive notion, very much against state ownership, but how do you create social solidarity? But the phrases that drive that are this notion of rights and responsibility.
Yes, right.
And, so
and also the means by which the pie might be able to be made larger.
Right. Yeah. So this plays very much into that, and the notion being you do want people to have a right to be an owner, but you also want to say, hey, you're going to run some risk as well.
Yes,
and so some people don't like that.
That's interesting. No, that's interesting.
And so you're trying to build a system where indeed you put some of the risk where it can in fact be managed.
Right.
And one of the problems with the system now is that it's difficult to manage Social Security risk. Very difficult to manage it politically. Nobody can touch it. But it is a huge systemic risk. It is now crowding out the fiscal resources we need to educate our children, to clean up the environment, to do health care, all the many things that we know need to be done is because we're so naive about how capitalism doesn't really empower people with capital. Instead, we have to do these really foolish things like Social Security.
Okay, it's there, and it's part of the thing, and that was a traumatic thing, the 1929 crash. And a lot of people, it really did make a big, impression on the consciousness and created a good deal of this idea that the government has a tremendous role to play. And I guess we don't have a system where it's going to be either unfettered laissez-faire or unfettered government takeover. It's going to be a combination of these two, and it's going to be a combination of historically inherited systems liaisoning with a new pattern of understanding. So we're not going to be overthrowing these things as being able to provide an alternative by which we might be able to move into a new direction that if we could just but see it, it's there in a sense before us. You talked before about the change. The evolutionary biologists talk about species appearance, that there's tremendous change, and then there's punctuated equilibrium, and the new thing comes all at once, very quickly. A new change comes in the species, or maybe the metaphor of birth, 9 months, and you leave into another way. Do you think we might be at that kind of a time? You talked briefly about paradigm. There's been, Mr. Kuhn's way of talking about that. Do you think we might be at a time of some sort of a qualitative transformation in terms of the evolution of events in this part of
we may well be.
universe?
Well, Jay Gould here in New York, of course, talks about that notion of, punctuated equilibrium. Evolution goes very slowly, and then suddenly you have a change, then it goes very slowly again. And something that goes along with the notion of a paradigm shift, that you don't get a genuine shift in a dramatic case unless it's clear that the previous paradigm, the previous model doesn't work. So those two in combination suggest to me, if it is clear that this paradigm doesn't work, if the sort of ownership pattern agnostic pattern doesn't work, which is what I'm suggesting, then indeed, if you had enough political capital put behind this, you could, and I would suggest very desperately need to have a shift in the next. Well, keep in mind we have now only 10 to 11 years before the baby boomers begin to retire. 76 million. That means we got roughly 2 investment cycles, about 10 to 12 years, to get this handled.
Get this thing straightened out.
And it's not even on the radar screen.
But it's on your radar.
It's on my radar screen. It's your radar screen.
And some of these other people that are beginning to build these, it is, and it might be that I would hope. One of the problems is, Jeff, even though we've been sitting here talking for an hour, we run out of time. We're running right out of time for this segment. We're going to have to do it again in future talks some more about it. But it's an incredibly important issue. The most important issue is understood comprehensively that can be addressed. And let's hope that notion of punctuated equilibrium or a change that would accommodate this new pattern. We may have a way that's going to show us, as Teilhard de Chardin said, the way toward the omega point, or we may be at a time of some sort of qualitative transformation. I would hope, and I think Lewis did, and Buck and Fuller did, and I think probably you do, but I want to thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Good to be with you again.
No, it's good. Good to see you. I'm sorry we hadn't. We could go on talking at great length, but I do remind you in the cable audience, it's been your pleasure, the Perceptions In, of Jeff Gates, and we're going to play at the end of this program a scroll of some of the people who've endorsed this incredibly important book. I want to show it right here again. The Ownership Solution. It's Addison Wesley. It's highly recommended, about as highly recommended as it's possible to do by myself, and you'd be well advised to get it. And we will put at the end of the program a scroll of the incredible array, wide array of people who have signed on to the ideas that Jeff advanced in his book, and it's been our pleasure to present that program to you now. We in Conversation invite you to tune in. We'll be coming back next week. That's it for this program. Once again, Jeff, thanks very, very much for participating.
Enjoyed it.
Pleasure. So anyway, so we're still rolling for another minute or so. Okay. So we got in a lot of things, but I think we ought to, this talk will still be heard by the people. So, but I think maybe we should probably think, if we can, maybe if you're interested or you come through New York, maybe we should try and get some television thing going. And do something.
I got your number. I'll call you next time I'm here.
Yeah, I'd like to get and do something in the studio. You know, we have a studio where things are controlled. We maybe show some slides or do something.
Okay.
You know, but we ought to start. Are you in touch with many people who are trying to get the word out through television or through?
No, not really.
No, they're all literate-oriented.
Well, Mario Cuomo called me and volunteered to intercede with Larry King, Brian Lamb, and Charlie Rose, and he never quite did. So I'm continuing
to intercede, what do you mean?
Me to call him and say, y'all have this guy on the show. So,
and he said he was willing to make that call.
He hasn't. No, I'll dog him again, but he hasn't done it yet.
Yeah. Now he signed on to the book.
He endorsed the book. He called me to read me the quote and make sure I like it.
Yeah, it was really good. Yeah, it's really good. You got an incredible array all the way from, well, wide. You've done really well. You got anyone else tackling it like this that you can see that's writing?
Yeah.
I mean,
no, not yet.
Yeah.
No, it's intended to stimulate people doing that.
So do you think it's a good idea to try and develop some television?
Yeah,
around this idea, or try to do it, because
the whole thing needs to be done.
We're going to be streaming on the internet.
It needs to be
video.
talked about. It needs to be talked about. That's all. Forget what the program is going to be. It needs to become an issue, and people need to understand it and be educated about it. So it's an education curve for most people.
Yeah, it is, and it's really interesting and so forth. You got such a wide variety of things. We did a lot of programs with Lewis, you know, in the past, you know.